Hi everybody, I'm Christy Sink. I'm a member of CCA's Human Resources Department, and I'm continuing to read out of the Animal Rescue Center series, and this one is called The Abandoned Hamster. Chapter 4, Turning Detective. Dumped, Ella insisted to Annie Brooks. She was sitting on her neighbor's fence watching Mickey graze alongside Rosie, Buttercup, and Chance. The mare and her foal belonged to the Brooks family. Rosie, the little Shetland, was staying at Animal Magic until they found a home for her, but she and Mickey were allowed to share the field. Annie was amazed. You mean the hamster was just dropped into your grandpa's garbage can and left there? Left to die. Ella frowned and shook her head. I'm surprised the shock didn't kill poor Hamlet, and if I hadn't found him when I did, he would soon have starved or ended up in a landfill. He's okay now, though. Joel checked him out, and we gave him a nice, comfy cage. In the distance, Mickey raised his head and let out an ear-splitting bray. The ponies kicked up their heels and galloped to a safe distance. So who dumped Hamlet? Annie asked. Ella shrugged. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Do you want to help? Annie nodded. Where do we start? At Grandpa's place. We'll pick up the trail from the start, right now. Annie jumped from the fence into her backyard. I'll just tell Mom where we're going, she said. Wait here, I'll be back in a second. You're welcome to try, but I think you've got a difficult job on your hands. Grandpa had listened patiently to Ella and Annie's plan, but now he shook his head. It could have been any one of 100 people who dropped the poor little thing into the can. I had a lot of customers yesterday. I know that, Grandpa, but I hoped you'd be able to remember a few details. Ella wasn't discouraged. She was determined to identify Hamlet's owner. For instance, when did you last empty the garbage can? And was there anyone hanging around yesterday who looked suspicious? Annie added. Ella's grandpa wrinkled his nose. Let me see. Oh, you mean the man wearing the black mask and the striped sweater carrying a sack over his shoulder? Grandpa, Ella groaned. It's important. We want to find out who did this to poor Hamlet and make sure they don't do it again. So you're turning into Sherlock Holmes. Grandpa sat down at the counter. Okay, let me think. Most of yesterday's customers were locals I know well. I don't think any of them would be likely to abandon Hamlet. What about the customers you didn't know? Ella asked. Was anyone hanging around near the garbage can? As she quizzed her grandpa, she saw someone hovering outside the entrance. It was Katie Platt, half hidden by a tall tree, but peeking around to Ella, then ducking out of sight when she realized she'd been spotted. Hang on a minute, her grandpa broke off to serve a customer. Did you see that? Ella whispered to Annie. Katie Platt is spying on us. Katie who? Anna hadn't heard about the new family at Miss Elliott's old house. Just then, Katie leaned back into view, then quickly ducked out of sight again. That's her, Ella hissed. You must know who I mean. She's the new girl in Mr. Hawk's class at school. Oh, yeah, her, Annie nodded. What's she up to? Why is she hiding? Ella muttered. Annie had no time to answer before a dark-haired woman in white pants and a bright pink shirt appeared in the entrance. Come on, Katie, don't hang back. Bring Bonnie and Clyde with you, the woman said as she approached the counter where Grandpa had just finished serving a customer. Reluctantly, the fair-haired girl appeared from behind the tree with the two Dalmatians. They wagged their tails and tugged Katie along, sniffing into every corner. Mr. Harrison, the woman said in a friendly voice. That's me, Ella's grandpa answered curtly, gearing up for another argument. I'm Julia Platt, your new neighbor. I believe you've already met my husband, Mike, and Katie, plus our two dogs. You could say that, Grandpa sniffed. We didn't get off to a very good start, I'm afraid. Mrs. Platt nodded. Katie told me all about Bonnie and Clyde and the damage they caused. I felt I should stop by to apologize. Wow! Ella stared at Mrs. Platt, then at Katie, who still looked as if she didn't want to be there. My husband has a lot on his mind right now, Mrs. Platt went on. Our move didn't go as smoothly as we'd hoped, and yesterday we had to deal with a broken boiler, and no plumber would come out on a Saturday. Well, all I can say is that, frankly, Mike was not in the best of moods. Grandpa nodded. That's all right. We won't worry anymore about the incident with the dogs. We've cleaned everything up, and my son and I are sure we can fix the fence, no problem. But you must let me pay for the damage. Where her husband had been rude and unreasonable, Mrs. Platt was sweet and helpful. And I have to apologize again about Bonnie and Clyde's behavior. They're young dogs, you see, and we only recently got them from an animal rescue center in our old town. It turns out they hadn't been well trained by their previous owner. By now, Ella's grandpa was nodding and smiling, and the two grown-ups were getting along nicely. Only Katie still looked uncomfortable as she made the Dalmatians stand by the garbage can, keeping them on a tight leash. You should talk to my granddaughter here, Grandpa was telling Mrs. Platt. I'm sure Ella and her brother Caleb would be able to help you with your dogs. They often train animals at Animal Magic down on Main Street. Did you hear that, Katie? Mrs. Platt turned to her daughter. Doesn't that sound like a good idea? Katie shrugged while Bonnie and Clyde pulled restlessly at their leashes. They tugged so hard that Katie fell sideways against the garbage can. The whole thing toppled to the ground. Woof, woof! The startled dogs strained at their leashes and broke free. They fled through the garden center gates. Oh no, not again, Katie sighed. She ran to catch Bonnie and Clyde. Oh dear, Mrs. Platt sighed. I'm beginning to think those dogs are more trouble than they're worth. The thing is, Katie is crazy about animals. Cats, dogs, rabbits, hamsters, you name it. Really? Ella was surprised. Katie didn't come across as the kind of kid who was crazy about animals. Yes, believe me, she'd be heartbroken if we let Bonnie and Clyde go. Woof, woof! The two Dalmatians had raced next door and were rampaging across the yard. Come here, sit! Lie down, a desperate Katie cried. Did you say hamsters? A sudden suspicion flashed into Ella's mind. Yes, anything with fur and 4 legs, Mrs. Platt smiled wearily. She got ready to lend her daughter a hand with the boisterous dogs. So does Katie have any other pets? Ella asked, blocking Mrs. Platt's way. Like a hamster, for instance. Does she have a hamster? Why, yes, Mrs. Platt said. Then she frowned. Actually, no, not right now. Yes or no, which is it? Surely Mrs. Platt must know. I'm sorry, but I'd better get back next door to catch those dogs, Mrs. Platt said as she stepped past Ella. What color is Katie's hamster? Ella called after her. But Mrs. Platt was in too much of a hurry to answer. Chapter 5. Searching for a Home. I bet I'm right, Ella told Annie. But you can't be sure, Annie argued. Ella had been explaining her Hamlet theory all the way back from the garden center. You must admit that it looks pretty suspicious. Ella headed for the reception area where Mom was reading through the first applications for Joel's job. Ella thinks it was Katie Platt who dumped Hamlet, Annie told Mom. Uh-oh, is Ella playing detective again? Ella's mom was too busy to pay much attention. Of course, Annie grinned. Anyway, now she's going to introduce me. That's nice, Mom muttered. She clicked the mouse and read some details. Jen Andrews, age 26, trained in Dublin, special qualification in dental nursing. Here he is right at the end, Ella announced, leading Annie into the small animals unit. The rabbit, hamsters, guinea pigs, and mice were lined up in clean, bright cages, each with a water bottle and a dish of special food. Annie followed Ella down the row of squeaking, burrowing creatures. They passed Hugo, the friendly brown rabbit, up at the bars of his cage, then Honey and Happy, 2 harlequin bunnies with black patches on their gray fur and black pom-pom tails. Then there were Lulu and Lacey, the long-haired guinea pigs, and Frankie, the ferret, peeking shyly out of his nest of straw. At the end of the row, Ella carefully opened Hamlet's cage. She reached in and picked him up. Little Hamlet blinked and twitched his ears. He sniffed at Ella's fingers and decided he was perfectly happy sitting in the palm of her hand. Can I hold him? Annie asked excitedly. Ella handed over the hamster. His little pink feet felt funny and scratchy, and his brown and white furry body was soft and warm. Will he bite? Annie asked. Not if you're gentle and don't make him jump. Hamlet seemed used to people and not easily scared, even after his ordeal in the garbage can. He's cute, isn't he? Adorable, Annie grinned. She pursed her lips and pretend kissed the hamster. Is she on the website yet? Ella nodded. Kalen put him up as soon as we'd chosen his name. So even if you're right about Katie Platt, you don't want to send him back to her? No way! Ella took Hamlet from Annie and placed him back in his cage. Then she went to the fridge and took a slice of apple from a plastic container. Hamster treat coming up. But if Katie is Hamlet's real owner, shouldn't you tell her where he is? Annie saw trouble ahead if Ella forged on and found Hamlet a new home. Ella pushed the slice of apple through the bars of Hamlet's cage, then shook her head. She was 100% sure that her theory was right. Katie abandoned him, didn't she? She so doesn't want him back. Even so, Annie felt uncomfortable. Maybe she had a reason. Such as? Ella couldn't see it. You saw what she was like, Annie. She doesn't take care of her pets. That's why Hamlet is not going back to her. End of story. No ifs or buts. At school on Monday, Ella told as many people as possible about Hamlet the abandoned hamster, hoping to find him a new home. He's really cute and friendly, she told Miss Jennings, her teacher, and so easy to take care of. I'm sorry, Ella, Miss Jennings said with a smile. I can't possibly give Hamlet a home. I go away to my house in Florida every school vacation. Who would take care of him while I was away? Hamlet is brown and white with furry ears and pink feet, Ella described the hamster to Mrs. Owen, one of the cafeteria workers at Lakewood Elementary. He doesn't bite and he likes to be held. Mrs. Owen stopped stacking up the dishes and listened carefully. We did have a hamster a long time ago, she said. They're so easy to take care of, Ella rushed on. You only have to clean out their cages and give them fresh water and food. If you give them a wheel to play in, that's all the exercise they need. Mrs. Owen nodded. I know, But my son Matthew is grown up now, so we don't have any pets. Besides, they make my husband sneeze if he's in the same room as them. So no, Ella, I'm afraid I can't give Hamlet a home." That afternoon on the way home, Annie sympathized with Ella on the school bus. "It's okay, you tried." Ella sighed and stared out the window at the bushes and fields beyond. "Trying isn't enough. Honestly, Annie, I've got to find a home for Hamlet before Katie Platt finds out where he is, changes her mind, and decides she wants him back," Annie guessed. "I'd ask Mom if we could have Hamlet, but I'm sure she'll say no." Linda Brooks had already adopted Buttercup and Chance from Animal Magic and was letting Rosie and Mickey graze in her field. Annie knew that asking her mom to adopt Hamlet would be one step too far. As the bus pulled up at the Crystal Park stop, Annie and Ella got off with the other kids. "George, do you want to adopt a hamster?" Ella pounced on her brother's best friend, who had already given a home to Lucky the rabbit. "Nope," he said, brushing her aside and heading up Three Oaks Road with Emma Matthews. Caleb overheard and tutted, "I already asked George." "Tell your mom about Hamlet anyway," Ella muttered to Annie as they said goodbye on Main Street. Inside Ella and Caleb's house, Mom was still going through job applications. She'd had 5 so far. "Which of these would you choose to interview?" she asked Caleb and Ella, showing them the printouts. "Oh, by the way, I got a phone call from Julia Platt about Bonnie and Clyde. I told her you'd both be glad to help with dog training classes for those 2 rascals." "You what?" Ella gasped. "Ella, speak properly," Mom told her. "It's not you what, it's excuse me, if you didn't hear properly, although I'm sure you did." "The Platts aren't exactly Ella's favorite family," Caleb explained, "but I bet training the dogs would be cool. When do we start?" "Tonight before dinner," Mom said, still sifting through her papers. "In fact, you'd better head over now. I told Mrs. Platt you'd be there by 5. "Sit," Caleb told Clyde in the field behind Growell. He made the arm gesture that went with the verbal command. The young Dalmatian sat down on the grass. Click. Caleb pressed the small training clicker, then swiftly handed Clyde a tasty treat. Click and treat. It worked like magic. Ella stood with Bonnie until Clyde had gotten the hang of the sit command. Once, twice, 3 times. "Good boy," Caleb patted the dog's broad head. Clyde wagged his tail and licked his lips. "Now it's our turn," Ella told Bonnie, who immediately leaped up and ran across the field, skipping and jumping and acting wild. "Crazy," Caleb sighed. But Ella wasn't easily beaten. "Here, Bonnie." She held up a doggy treat. Bonnie recognized food from far away. Barking happily, she bounded back to Ella. "Sit," Ella ordered as the dog screeched to a halt. Voice and arm gesture together. "Be firm. Say it again. Sit." Bonnie obeyed. Click went Ella's clicker, then the reward. Gulp. Bonnie swallowed it down. "Again," Caleb said quietly. Ella repeated the exercise patiently and firmly. After 6 commands and 6 successes, she was happy. "Good girl," she said, patting Bonnie. "You're a beautiful dog. Yes, you are." Happy Bonnie loved the attention. She gazed up at Ella, waiting for the next command. "Okay, let's try stay," Caleb decided. "Sit and stay. If Bonnie and Clyde get that far in one session, they'll be doing well." And sure enough, the young Dalmatians were smart dogs who learned easily. After half an hour of click and treat, Ella and Caleb walked them back home with high hopes. "How did it go?" Mrs. Platt asked them as they ushered the dogs into the house. Caleb let Clyde off the leash while Ella dried Bonnie's feet with an old towel. "They did really well," Caleb told Mrs. Platt. "We taught sit and stay. Next time we'll try come here." "You hear that, Katie?" Mrs. Platt called over her shoulder. As usual, Katie Platt was lurking behind the nearest large object. At her mother's urging, she edged out from behind the door. "Bonnie and Clyde just had their first training session and they passed with flying colors," her mom said. Katie frowned and said nothing. Giving Bonnie one last wipe with the towel, Ella let her go. The dog bounced off toward Katie and began to tug at the hem of her jeans. She was soon joined by Clyde, and the 2 dogs jumped up at Katie, who seemed helpless to stop them. "Down," she ordered, but the dogs ignored her. So she turned and stomped off into the house. "I'm worried about Katie," Mrs. Platt said as if she was thinking out loud. "She doesn't seem to be settling into Crystal Park or her new school very well. I think she misses her old friends." Caleb nodded and blushed. There was an awkward silence. Meanwhile, Ella's eyes wandered across the junk piled up in the storage room. There were cardboard boxes everywhere and plastic lawn chairs stacked in a corner. On top of the chairs was a small, empty animal cage. "Hey," Ella said under her breath. "Well, see you tomorrow," Caleb was saying to Mrs. Platt. "Yes, and thank you for agreeing to train Bonnie and Clyde. It's such a relief." Ella double-checked the cage. It was tipped on its end with wood shavings spilling out through the bars, and there was a metal wheel and a water bottle and everything a hamster would need. "Caleb!" Ella ran to catch up with him out on the road. Wait for me, guess what I just saw? I don't know, but I bet you're going to tell me. An empty hamster cage perched on top of the lawn chairs. So, Caleb asked, putting on his helmet and picking up his bike. So that's the proof we needed about Hamlet. He did live here with Katie Platt, and no wonder she looks so guilty all the time. She so totally is the person who dumped Hamlet.